and how easy it is to manage and work with your companies. So why do you need FindMile? If you have company vehicles, just to check and track your mileage with those vehicles to make sure that technicians aren't driving them in places they shouldn't be, to make sure that they're not driving extra miles on your company vehicles. It is a kind of a low-cost GPS, so it lets you track past issues that were entered. If a technician says he's driving across town and things like that, I'm going to show you how that works. And then if you have personal vehicles, to track your actual mileage, so you have a way to compare against what the technician is turning in to what you are pulling out of the system, and can actually track and see if those compare. So let's say the system is saying that they're running 1,000 miles and they turned in 1,500. Then you go back and look and see for those variances to see if there's any differential. Or you can use it straight out to pay your technicians. Say we have a standard, and our standard is FindMile gives us a report to pay you guys, and that's what we're going to pay based on. So I'm just going to skip through these slides. You can also use them with company vehicles to charge back personal miles to technicians. So you get an odometer at the beginning of the month and an odometer at the end of the month. Look at the mileage that they drove for the company, subtract the two, and there's your personal miles. Maybe you give a 20% lenience on that, and then anything over that you bill back to the individual. We do produce full mileage reports for you, fully designed mileage reports for you based on your rules. So if you have commute miles, or if you have rules that say if they drive to the office and go home from the office, we're not going to pay those miles, we can plug all those rules in. Maybe your commute miles is dynamic. In other words, based on the technician's home to the office is the amount of commute miles that you want to use for every technician. We can put that all into the structure for you to give you those mileage reports.
Hey, John, it's Gary. Are you supposed to be sharing your screen, or was just checking?
Oh, I'm sorry. Was I not?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I should have pointed it out earlier. I just didn't realize it.
No problem. Here, all it is a few slides that show, nothing monumental. So really where we're at is looking at the report, guys, and this is really the big payday for this shared screen anyhow, is this is the report that you would get, and it has the service call number, the company's name, and then the address. This is the information that we pull out of the system, and we're able to calculate the distance from a person's home to their first call. If it's not greater than their commute miles, then it subtracts that. And then their first call to their next call, the next call, the next call, and it's going to give you those mileages between each location. And it's going to report those. It also reports the amount of time that a technician reports in there. And this is kind of critical, especially if you want to make sure your profitability is really good. So they reported 6 minutes and 2 minutes. The calculated amount of time was 4.5 minutes. This one's not off, but we do see them sometimes where this is, where the technician will actually have, his reported time will be like 45 minutes here. And this is because maybe he dispatched and he didn't arrive, or 100 other reasons. Maybe you'll find out that your technicians are putting things into their report that they shouldn't be. So we give you a percentage here of how far off those two numbers are, and we give it to you in a CSV file so you can easily sort, find, filter, and find those errors, and then go address those errors with the technicians or with maybe your policies and procedures. The locations that we've installed this at, both have found things that they're doing in their procedures that are actually causing unjustified pieces in their profitability that they wanted to adjust. So they've gone back and made those adjustments because of these reports and helped them find issues and problems with how they're doing things. This report is really easy to read. It's simple to give to a person and say, this is how I'm paying you, and this is the mileage, and all of that kind of stuff. One of our new features, and I'm going to flip over to actually our live version and get out of the PowerPoint, which I know everybody loves. This is one of our new features of our website. This is what our website looks like right here. It allows you to log in. It lets you see your company information, what your current mileage is. So if you're paying 45 cents per mile, that's what we have in there. And then additionally, if you want to pay each employee a different mileage rate, you can enter those on the employee tab. If you need to deactivate an employee, you can just go in, click update, and deactivate an employee. You can click edit their home address, so you can change their home addresses. It's really easy to manage. You can add a new employee. But one of our new features that we just added was the ability to map the technician's day. So I'm able to look at a technician's day on a map and actually see that they went from point A to point B to point C to point D, you know, E, F, G, whatever their day is. And I can look at that on any day and update that map and see how well they were moved around the city. You know, this is the city of Houston, but you know, we're using Google Maps to display this. It'll show any city. This is not actually necessarily the route they took, but it's just the best route for those 2 points to go together. So it allows you to look at each day for each technician and say, okay, I've got this guy. He's pretty well in staying in his territory, and you can change it for any of your technicians. One of the requests that I just heard from Gary was, hey, can we put multiple technicians on the map at a time? I think we could add that. I don't think that would be too much of a challenge for us to add. It is a new feature that we add. I'm going to show you real quick how to run a report. It's really not challenging. I just come in here. I select the dates so if I want to run a report for last week, I can just come in, put my dates in for last week, click Run Report. It's going to run the report for all the technicians. Or if I just want to run it for a specific technician, I can just select one technician and run the report. It's going to email me, the person that's logged in, or any administrator that I have set up to email that report. That's the basics of the program, guys. It really allows you to run those reports and email off those reports directly to you, so you can get those reports back to you and be able to make processes and changes with it. Like I said, that mapping feature is really functional to see whether or not your technicians are driving all over the city, and if there's any issues that you need to address with that. Let's talk real quick. Well, let's see. Are there any questions?
So far there's not, but do you want? Yeah, remind people that if you have a question, just to hit it in the chat window. So one question has come up. Who all has access to this data? How are the miles calculated? As the crow flies, shortest distance or fastest way?
So we use best time calculations on all of our pieces. So it actually looks at, you know, it's always going to probably take you to a freeway and a freeway to the location and then off to a side street. The difference between any navigation, according to Google, is a difference of less than 1.5%. So the difference between most calculations on a short route, it's not going to vary much in the mileage piece. And that's really what we're looking. Even the time is going to vary. Now, I can't do traffic because we're going back in time. So there's always going to be that piece of traffic that can fall in there. But even best route versus worst route, you're only looking at mileage maybe 1 or 2% differential. You're probably not that accurate as it stands today if you're not doing anything. Are we going to be able to add alerts to this? I think that, yeah, I think as we get more people signed on, this is going to grow, and you know, we'll be able to pass more information back and put information back into eAutomate. Today it's only a one-way push out. You know, who has access to input the data? We're taking that data straight from your eAutomate system that's running CEO Juice today and pushing that data as a data file right out, and so it's not, there's no input that you have to do. It's being pulled automatically for you and put into our system. It's an automatic calculation on the back end through our SQL database. So it's that's how it's being processed.
John, you want to talk about kind of the difference here between this and GPS? Is it really the kind of Big Brother piece?
Okay, so it's not Big Brother. I know that we have this map and it looks like, oh, well, you must have GPS tracked them, or, you know, there has to be. This is just your data that's coming out of eAutomate. So your technicians are entering this information. You know, their starting point is their home. You know, so we're not, we actually eliminated their home call back home on this map now, but their home address is their starting point every day. Every technician is giving you their home address. It's where you're sending their W-2 forms to, or, you know, you at least have it. So you're not tracking them like Big Brother. Instead, we're looking at this as a retrospective thing. So usually the day after the data's, you know, pushed out to the system at noon, at 8 o'clock, and then it's being processed live in the back end. It's not looking at them as a minute-by-minute tracking. Instead, we're looking at the information that the technician has actually entered through Remote Tech or through eAutomate. So it's all the data that we already have. We're just able to process it now in a way and put it visually onto a map that makes sense so that you can actually see what's going on. It's not so that I know that they stopped at a gas station to get a candy bar. Instead, I'm just looking at where did they go during their day that they're telling us where they went. If a technician, if a call is not invoiced, it won't show up in here until it's invoiced, but once it's invoiced, we go back and reprocess that information. So if there was a day where, you know, tech says, oh, well, I did a call, and you just process it, the next time the data is exported to us, we add that in there and it gets put into the system. That was a question that came up.
Could it be done off completed call versus invoice call, or it has to be invoice?
We always want to go off the invoice call because there's always things that get changed throughout the day, and we only want to look at the stuff that's actually processed all the way through. We didn't want to look at just completed calls because it's just too much moving parts when we looked at just completed calls as opposed to invoice calls. But if a call is invoiced later, it will go back and correct that data.
So you got a question of the manufacturer. You want to just say who you are, John, just so everybody, because that question comes up.
Sure. Yeah, I'm John Balter. I work for Seamless Solutions, but I'm the owner and operator of FindMile. Our data is actually stored out in New Hampshire, where I have my programmer located, and his name is Matt Bemis. He couldn't join us today, but he actually is the one that houses all the data. I personally don't have access to your data, so just if that makes anybody more reassured. But Matt has a non-conflict interest with a data center, and so we store all the data as a third party out there. FindMile is a small company. There's only 2 of us. We run the company as a sole proprietorship. And we can provide you with a sample report. If you'd like to see a sample report of your data, we can definitely pull a sample, take a report, and take a look at it. You know, do we have any national competition with this program? I don't think so. As far as I know, we've never run across anybody that has anything similar to this that I know of, because we're really just processing that data. We're pulling geolocations, and then we've come up with an algorithm to run to process the back end. We're not using Google pieces to actually run these. This map right here is Google because it's just easier to display. We're not using Google on the calculation side, but Google makes the display a lot easier than our back-end software looked. So, and people were much more familiar with the ability to zoom in and zoom out on Google. So we went with that on the display piece, but the calculations are actually using a really complex algorithm that we actually use multiple mapping softwares to track.
So that question was provide national comparisons. So I don't think you can do that, can you?
We haven't done that yet. National comparisons against other companies. You know, as we grow, I'm sure we could probably do some national comparisons and say average drive time for a technician is, you know, X or Y. I don't think right now our sample database is large enough to look at a national comparison, but, you know, once we reach over 50 or 100 customers that we're actually tracking on a daily basis, I don't see why we could go back and absolutely give national comparisons.
So Michael's asking the direction. So if I'm understanding this correctly, the techs are simply following the calls they're dispatched to, and you're just calculating the mileage based on the best route that they should be taking. So all the techs would need to do is, drive as they're dispatched, and their mileage calculation should match yours. Is that?
Yeah, it's exactly correct. We're taking the time of the call and using that as the way to say, okay, well, I did this call at 8 o'clock, I did this call at 9, I did this one at 9:15. That's how we're putting them in line. So we're looking at them based on the linear entry of the call. In other words, I was at, my arrival time is this, and my departure time is this, my dispatch time is this. That's the way we're looking at the calls. We're not looking at them, we're actually looking at dispatch time. So if I dispatched at this time and arrived at this time, that's how we're calculating that response time, and that's how we're comparing it against their travel times. We're not, we're not looking at it as it is on on the dispatch board, but we're actually looking at it as it is completed for the day.
And just a point.
After it's invoiced, we're looking at that.
Sorry, John. I was just going to say, from the CEO Juice point of view, if enough people start using this, then it would make sense for us to look at alerts and say, okay, the tech's claiming 100 miles for this day, but according to the system, he should only have traveled, 20 or whatever that number would be.
Right. I'd like to take data from this and push it back into eAutomate and put more accurate mileages into eAutomate. So, there's definitely some room for growth on this program. Let me just show you guys, just so we can get to the question of, what does it cost for this product? The new mapping feature without GPS, we really like this. I hope that people see some value in being able to do this. It basically, like Gary was saying, it's just, these are the locations, starting point is their home, and then these are their calls they did for the day, and we're just basically automatically mapping that onto a Google map for you. So let's just talk, there's a special for CEO Juice customers. It's $1,000 install, and then it covers your first year, and then it's $500 for every year afterwards. You can run as many alerts as you want. You can have as many logins as you want for, if you want service managers to have this, if you want a dispatcher to have it, whoever you want to have a login into the system to run the reports, it's fine. And then this covers up to 20 technicians. For every 20 technicians afterwards is an extra $500 a year. So it's really inexpensive. This is an annual cost. So if you have under 20 technicians, it's $1,000. If you have 40 technicians or less, it's $1,500 for that first year. So really inexpensive to get the software up and running and trying out and, see if this is a fit for your company. And like I said, you get the full functionality of the website with, looking at the maps, running the reports. And like I said, as we add new features will be passed along to you at that same price. This is kind of an entry level to get people into the program and get more companies reporting with us so that we can do things like national statistics and adding new things. One of the other things is that we pull geocodes for all of the locations, and so we're taking those geocodes. We want to put those geocodes back into eAutomate, and hopefully, down the road we'll be able to do more things like territories and stuff like that, where you can actually take those geocodes and put them out on a map and do some territory pieces on there. But right now, as the program sits, this is what it is, and I think at that price, it's an enormous price savings, and it has some big functionalities. So if you're under 20 technicians, $1,000 for that install and the first year, $500 for each year afterwards. How do I sign up? Well, you can call me or you can email me at sales@findmile.com, and we can get you signed up. Since you're a CEO Juice customer, it's really quick and easy to get signed up. We just activate a report that CEO Juice sends to us, and I send you an onboarding piece that allows you to give me your username, password, and your technician's home addresses, so we can program all that stuff in for you so that you're not just getting a blank slate having to enter all the technicians to start with. After that, it doesn't take any time at all to get rolling. Usually a couple days, and we have you up and set up in your database. All the databases are completely separate. There's no cross-pollination between data. That's why when you ask, well, can we do national statistics, it's a little more difficult because we run every company as a separate database. But we could definitely, if we get enough companies out there that are reporting and we want to do some national statistics on technicians, I think it's something we could absolutely look at down the road. Are there any other questions, or anybody think that
Any reasons why you think this is not a good fit? Any kind of feedback for John? This is a new product that he's trying to get going, and I'm curious what everybody thinks. I am recording this, and I'll post it out on that same link.
I'm gonna let's see. Can I unmute him? No. And it looks like Jeff Ford has his hand up, but Jeff, you haven't put in your PIN number.
So Jeff's just asking for a best practice for the use.
Of use? Yeah. One of the things that you'll learn when you start to use this program is we're going to give you some best practices on how to do calls on coming to the shop, things like that, how to track those pieces. If you have a tech that actually doesn't come to your office, but you've been using office calls as your calls, you probably want to set up, he's going someplace else, going to his house or whatever, you want to set up his own location for that stuff, and we'll help you work through those pieces of it. Mostly the best practice of this is because we're just, we're giving you a report of what they did during the day. It's pretty much the standard best practices that are out there for service calls, how to do most service calls and those things. We'll definitely go through an orientation webinar with you and show you how to run reports and look at those CSV files for your technicians, and we'll point out a few issues that you want to address with the techs.
All right, I think that's it, unless anybody else has a last-minute question.
Jeff just popped up, I think, one other question. He said personal mileage during the day, lunch and stuff. Because they're not entering service calls for those, Jeff, none of that stuff is going to show up in my report. So that's all the personal stuff. So, of course, personal stuff is not tracked in eAutomate, so you're not going to have that tracked in FindMile, so it's not going to show up for you. So you're not going to have to worry about having to exclude things like lunches or doctor's visits, which you don't want to be paying for those miles anyhow. So that's the big thing for personal miles. We're kind of taking that stuff out. And if you have company vehicles, this report, you could just run it, weekly, monthly, daily if you wanted to, and look at the mileage that people are turning in just to see whether or not they're driving, they got a vacation home that's 500 miles away, and every so often they're driving out there to go work on it in the weekend. Oh, you were asking if you log lunch calls, if you're logging a lunch call, wherever that address, that lunch call is at, they're going to be tracked to that call and back. What we can do for that is we can actually exclude that data from being sent to us and just exclude those lunch calls altogether. If they have a special call type, we can just exclude that call type from being pulled. It's really easy to create an exclusion for that call type. So we just take that call type and say, we're not going to track lunch calls at all, so we'll just pull that call type out, or remote calls or phone fix calls. We'll just exclude those and they won't come through. You know, we're really looking at physical location calls. That's the ones we want, you know, wherever they actually physically drove to. And that all we're looking at is addresses so that we can track that day from point to point to point. And like Gary said, we're looking to improve this product. You know, if you sign on board and say, hey, I really want you to add this or this or this, we're really open to that type of suggestion so that we can grow this product and meet more people's needs. So once you sign on board, you know, we're happy to take suggestions. I know that we've already had one customer sign on board just recently, and they asked for 2 or 3 things, and we kind of knocked them out in a weekend. So it's really not the end of the world to add new pieces to it. And we're right over the 30-minute mark. I don't want this to drag out too long, so if nobody has any other questions, I think we can go ahead and end this.
Sounds good, John.
And if you need to get in touch with me, there's my telephone number.
All right, thanks, everyone. Catch you later, John.
Thanks.